Sifter for the ear.
News, interviews, reviews, cinema, TV, streaming. Action!
Hi y'all, this is Jerry Williams, aka TV Jerry. Got back from vacation and got the sad news that Bill Bowman had died. He was known as the Bowman Body and was the host of a shoddy shock theater type horror show with silly skits and a scary movie. I'll include a link to the trailer for a documentary on him on the webpage for this show at tvjerry.com.
It's funny, these shows will say, well, we're a non-union show, but they'll sign a SAG-AFTRA agreement. I actually had someone say to me at one point, well, we need the actors.
That was Dave O'Farrell talking about how some people don't see the importance of a union for technicians on TV and movie sets. Dave is the business agent for IATSE Local 487, which is based in Baltimore, but also represents Virginia. He'll provide insight into the workings of the union and more.
Sifter Review of the Week.
Will and Harper on Netflix. Before Harper Steele transitioned as a woman, she was a longtime writer for Saturday Night Live, where she became good friends with Will Ferrell. This documentary chronicles their journey around the country as they visit dive bars and other venues to see how she fits in and how she feels about it. The promise of two funny people on a road trip should provide humor along with the serious discussions. Unfortunately, this is almost devoid of any genuine laughs because most of the time is spent in their earnest dialogue. Even the brief appearances from other SNL alum like Kristen Wiig, Molly Shannon, and Seth Meyers don't add much more than encouragement. Of course, transgender identity is worth attention, but this film spends much more time repeating the same information and issues. This examination of a friendship is heartfelt, but the film is more message than fun. I gave it 2.5 out of 5 stars. David O'Farrell, welcome to Sifter for the Ear. First of all, what does IATSE stand for and what does it do?
Well, IATSE is the union that represents not just motion picture and television technicians, but technicians across stagecraft, trade shows, ticket sellers, live concerts, animation. And it stands for, if you want the long title, the International Alliance of Theatrical Stage Employees, Motion Picture Technicians, and Allied Crafts of the United States and Canada. AFL-CIO-CLC. That's why we just say IA.
And how and when did it start?
Well, the IA started over 100 years ago with some stage locals around the country, but Local 487 was chartered in 1990 for the Mid-Atlantic area.
487 is Virginia, Maryland, and D.C.?
Virginia, Maryland, D.C., an odd sliver of Delaware.
Oh, okay. And you're listed as the business agent. What does that mean exactly?
I'm responsible for the business of the local. That includes negotiating agreements, enforcing agreements, helping to obtain work under the agreements, make sure everybody's treated fairly. But my primary responsibilities are enforcements of the contract across all the work we do.
And that's a lot of different ones. I mean, that's not just one agreement for everybody.
Yeah, there's a number of agreements out there.
And they all have to be negotiated and administrated separately.
Correct.
Of course. Why keep it easy?
Exactly. They want to keep it interesting for us.
Right. And what is your background? Were you in the biz? Were you a grip before you got into this?
I started in 1985 in the industry. I started in Maryland, where we're based. I was one of those that got to do a little bit of everything. There were those opportunities to literally do everything on a production on both sides. I've been a production manager, I've been a production coordinator, as well as, the way I like to put it, I've done everything but medic, because you don't want me being the first responder. And I haven't been an electric because I don't want to need the medic.
There you go. Now, I know, again, this is for people who probably don't know a lot of this stuff. You always hear about the Teamsters and IA. What's the difference?
The Teamsters represent the drivers. They handle, all the trucks, the motorhomes. If you drive by a set, all those trucks are under Teamster agreements and are driven by Teamsters. Camera is covered by a national local. Makeup and hair is an East Coast local. Production coordinators, production accountants are one East Coast local. Then you also have SAG-AFTRA, which represents the actors. And you have the Writers Guild as well as the Directors Guild. So all of those unions are involved.
last year there was all the talk about the writer strike and then the actor strike. And IA recently, just like you mentioned earlier, just approved the contract with AMPTP, which is the big one. How did that go? Did y'all get everything you want?
You never get everything you want in
Oh, right.
negotiation.
Silly me.
And certainly neither do they.
What are some of the big accomplishments that y'all were hoping for that came through?
The biggest were significant wage increases over the life of it. We accomplished something with benefits that we hadn't had before. Under the Our Area Standards Agreement, there was Maryland, non-Maryland, and that was a long time carryover from, there was a time where each local negotiated their own agreements.
Wow.
And the studios would pit us against one another to see who would bid the lowest. So they started, the international along with the locals started creating these national agreements. But one of the thing was they call it Maryland, non-Maryland. I really don't like that, but I can't get them to change the name. But there were differences in the wages and in the benefits. This year, we were able to successfully negotiate what amounts to about a 23% increase in benefits and put the entire nation under one benefit rate.
Wow.
So not only did all the benefits go up significantly, but it's one rate no matter where you work. Within the wages, we've been working and are working towards over the course of it to bring it to one wage rate, because right now about 90% of the work occurs in not what's classified as non-Maryland states. We've made improvements to our penalties for if they invade our turnaround, our rest periods. We were able to add Juneteenth as a recognized holiday.
Wow.
It was odd how long that, a fight for Juneteenth, and even before that, Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday being national holidays, getting them codified into the agreements.
You mentioned turnaround. Explain to people what that means exactly, because I know that can be an issue from a safety point of view, primarily.
Turnaround is basically a rest period that has to be met before you can be brought back in so that people get a sufficient amount of rest. It's a 10-hour turnaround from dismissal until call time, which should get everybody home at a reasonable time, allow them to get some rest and come back. But if they invade that for some reason, then we've increased the penalties considerably. There was an issue of people working more than 7 days in a row. So after the second week of that, there's a mandatory turnaround or it goes into severe penalties. We were also able to add as one of the penalties over 15 hours of work, triple time. Everything we put into these contracts with these penalties are all avoidable. If the company chooses to do it, then they pay the penalty, but they're all avoidable. Just like breaking people on time, we have terms in our contract that you have to feed people every 6 hours. And they get a break. They get to sit down. It's not a grab a sandwich and go right back to work, that they have to be able to sit down for at least a half an hour, or there's penalties. So they're all there as deterrents, and they're all avoidable.
Surprise guest drop in.
Speaking of working hard and being on the set, somebody dropped in who wanted to say hello. I think you might know this person. Hold on one second.
Now let's see if I can get the video up. That's the hard part.
Yeah, you don't know anything about that, right?
Well, it's what happens when you work with grips.
Yeah.
Edit that part out. Otherwise, I'm going to get a lot of ugly letters from the grips.
Footnote.
Charlie Harris has been a key grip and camera operator for many years and is also a longtime member of IATSE. So, Charlie, how long have you been in IA?
I first joined an IA local in, I think, 1988, which was not 487. It was the Danville stagehands to work on a movie called Crazy People. And then a few years later, 487 was in full swing and recruiting in Virginia, and I joined them.
Tell us what you did on sets, Charlie.
I mostly worked as either a set electrician or a key grip, which is part of the lighting department. And now I also work in the camera department as an operator and teach classes at Virginia Commonwealth University, trying to bring up a new generation and not only teach them about the technical stuff, but let them know the importance, especially starting out, of a union, to give them the bargaining power to move up quickly.
Good point. Now, and actually, right before you got on, David was talking about the new contract and some of the things, the turnaround adjustments and the raises and the pay and the benefits. How have you seen the union benefit you in your career?
Well, starting out, it was interesting. Here in Richmond, a right to work state, we had not really a union, but our technicians all got together at a rental house and sort of set our rate structure and our basic demands. And as long as everyone held to that and didn't have a race to the bottom, we did pretty well. And then people started not following that structure so much, and everybody was undercutting so they would get the job. And that's when the union became much more important. They set a floor where no one could really go below. For me, it sped up my advancement very quickly because I didn't have to spend as much time fighting with the producers about a dollar here and a dollar there. There were some givens, and working conditions was one of the big things that the union did, especially for me, but for all of the technicians, was to give us working conditions that were uniform around the board. At a certain point, they had to pay you overtime. At a certain point, they had to give you a meal or at least a meal break.
So, Charlie, you ever still get to be out on the set, or are you too involved at VCU now to have time for that?
I still have time. Unfortunately, we haven't had that many productions. I've been very lucky in my work that there was a period through the 90s and early 2000s where I was traveling out of state a lot. That gave me a union benefit of both housing and per diem, and I was able to bank that per diem and buy a lot of equipment, which goes out on rental on pictures almost all the time.
Well, anything else you want to mention about being in the union, or something you want to say to David before we let you get back to your morning?
I want to say, David, keep up the good work. I really appreciate the move in our bargaining from the days where we were individual contracts per show to the area standards. It made a much more level playing field across the country, which was very important. I know before that we had some shows where we were able to get a lot of benefits for our members, and some shows where we had to go in the race to the bottom to keep the shows in our jurisdiction. And now it's a much more level playing field. And David was a big part of making that happen.
Thank you, Charlie. I hope to see you on a show soon.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Jerry. Your shows have been a big part of the Richmond film community for, 25 years now?
The website, yeah. 26, actually. Crazy.
It seems like yesterday.
And we all look the same, which is the best part.
Exactly.
Thank you, Charlie.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Surprise guest drop in.
So we got somebody else who's dropping in to say hello with a different perspective on the union. Matt, hi there.
Hey, Jerry.
Footnote.
Matt Benedetti is a government relations consultant working primarily with the Virginia legislature.
I feel like I haven't seen you in hours. We were just down meeting on Monday.
Yeah, did you keep the secret, Matt?
I did keep the secret, Jerry.
So that you got the surprise, Dave. Let's
Look
see
at the
that surprise on your
David's face.
Yeah,
I think that's a poker face all the time, right? Yeah.
Yes, it is. It is 100%.
So, Matt, why are you here? What do you have to do with IATSE?
I've been working with David for 3 years, maybe.
Yeah.
I've been working with the film industry for much longer than that.
Yep. You've been on the show talking about that.
Well, as you know, there's a state association, the Virginia Production Alliance, which I work with, which is how I met the great David O'Farrell. Had some conversations about how to expand what we were doing in our legislative efforts in the state. And Local 487 has been great in that capacity.
What are y'all trying to do?
But my primary focus is to create an environment within the Commonwealth of Virginia that incentivizes this type of activity. And we've been working on this for several years. We've had some success. We've had some setbacks. When you have conversations with people, whether they're elected officials or just, Joe Schmo off the street, they don't really understand and grasp the concept of the industry and how it can be like a traditional manufacturing production. The Virginia Economic Development Partnership will go out and try to attract X company. The most recent one would be Lego, and they're building this huge factory down in just south of Richmond. But it's really no different than a production, a couple thousand jobs when they're fully up and running. And if we're able to be as successful as David and I would like to be, we could have some of these companies actually put shovels in the ground and build studios here.
Right.
But making the connection between the traditional economic development projects, the factories versus a content creation manufacturing has been what I think one of the biggest challenges and interesting challenges.
A lot of it's just trying to educate and interact with legislators and other people in government to get them to understand how this actually works and what it actually means. Where ours is, show could have $100 million budget, and that's $100 million that wouldn't be in the state without some kind of credit. Just reminding them the credits are based on actual spends within the state. It's the most transparent tax credit out there because it has to be audited before they get a dime. This isn't a promise of, hey, we're going to build a factory and create 1,500 jobs. And then they come in and they create 750 jobs. There's no clawback. A show comes in and spends $1 with with a crew member, and then that crew member spends that dollar on their mortgage, on their car payments, on groceries, on
Right.
dining out. And then that trickles down to other businesses. And unfortunately, when they do the analysis within the state agencies, they don't always look at that.
So let me ask you both a question while I've got you on the phone too, Matt. Of course, this is a right to work state and IA is a union. How do those two things work together? How do you explain that if you're going into the legislature and they say, well, we like our right to work, but we don't like unions? How do y'all justify those two things working together, which they obviously do in this state and have for years and years?
Under right to work, if you have enough union members on a production, we have the right to organize that production. We just did that with a relatively small production that was in Virginia. So they hired a large number of union members across all the departments, and we were able to go in and negotiate an agreement.
The non-union people go under the same rates as the union. Is that what the agreement?
We treat everybody the same. So if there were non-union people on it, we would treat them the same. We have to have, in order for us to organize, we have to have a majority of the crew.
Uh-huh.
If we don't have a majority of the crew, then we have to try to we can organize those people in. And we are an open membership. We're very easy to join. We don't have seniority lists where you have to wait until the 80 grips in the department have to be hired before you because you're the new guy. It's
Right.
about what the people want, the crew want. If a show wants to come in and can find enough qualified non-union crew, then they can be a non-union show.
Uh-huh.
I can tell you a show can't come in and find enough qualified non-union crew. We have the most qualified people in the state to do this kind of work. The shows will still bring some people with them from Los Angeles or New York or Atlanta, but for the most part, they are hiring locals because we've shown we're qualified. So, I'm real proud of our crew down there because I'll put them up against anybody anywhere in the country. And I say that to every show that comes in when I'm pushing to get our people hired. When Matt and I started working together, one of the points I stressed, I hope I stressed, was we're not making this about, it's not a union or a non-union issue. It's a jobs issue.
Ah, okay.
Educating is the key in anything that we do at the legislature, but specifically around this industry. God's honest truth. I had lunch with David and some other people, and I just basically asked him, can you just run down off the top of your head the number of different jobs on a production on a given day?
Oh, wow.
And he just kept going.
Yeah.
And I didn't even take a breath. And I was like, that's a lot of daggone people just for a single day. The work is good. We just want to get more of it here in the Commonwealth.
I always tell people, look at the credits of Lincoln. Everybody in those credits is union, with the exception of production assistants. And we've organized them in the commercial market, and they're currently negotiating an agreement. And I would imagine in the not too distant future, we'll be bringing them in as well on the motion picture and television side, either us or DGA or someone, and they want to do that hire locally because it's less expensive. They don't have
Sure.
to put them up. They don't have to give them per diem or travel expenses.
Matt, you got any farewell words?
I just wrote a story about the term extras. They're not really called extras anymore. They're called support actors or SAs.
Just like we just renamed, they're not gaffers anymore. They're chief lighting
Right.
technician, and they're not best boys anymore. They're now assistant chief lighting technician.
I do want to say that I have enjoyed getting to know David and getting to know his organization and working with them. And being from a Republican family in the Commonwealth, when I told my wife that I was interviewing as a lobbyist for a union, she about dropped the plate she was cleaning in the kitchen to say, never would I have believed that Matt Benedetti would be lobbying for a union, but it's for the content creation industry. And they do great work. And it's been a joy and an honor to work with these people and get to know them.
Matt, great to see you. Thank you so much for doing this.
My pleasure. David, good to see you. Maybe I'll see you in a couple of hours, couple of
Yeah.
days.
Who knows?
Thanks, Jerry.
All right. Thank you,
Thanks,
Matt. So, how hard is it actually to become a member of the union?
We just want you to have some basic experience coming in, but we're an open membership. It's $1,000 initiation fee, but you can show up at one of our meetings and request a payment plan for that. It's $100 application fee. We're currently at $68 a quarter dues, which is relatively low. We do a prospective members meeting every month, and I kind of half jokingly say we spend more time trying to talk people out of it than into it. It's got to be what you want to be doing. Just because you join doesn't guarantee you're going to work.
Sure.
We have over 1,000 members within my local, 400 of which, or maybe a little better, are in Virginia.
Uh-huh.
If we have multiple shows going on like we have in the past, there are opportunities for everybody.
Sure.
When you only have one show in, like Atlantis, which was a good sized show, there's just not enough jobs for everybody.
Sure.
Footnote.
In case you weren't aware, Atlantis was the biopic of Pharrell Williams that was shot here recently. Do you have one story of one incident, and you don't have to say the name of a movie if it's something awkward, where the union benefited the members, where it was, I'm sure there are lots where they could get fair
We
pay.
benefit the members every single show.
Every show, exactly. But you know what I mean? Was there something where you said the union came in and really made a difference, or it's an interesting story about the union's effectiveness?
There have been multiple shows in my jurisdiction, but several in Virginia where they came in and they were a non-union show. Now, it's funny, these shows will say, well, we're a non-union show, but they'll sign a SAG-AFTRA agreement. And I actually had someone say to me at one point, well, we need the actors. You can imagine, I'm relatively mild-mannered. The other person on the phone one of the representatives had to calm me down because I went off on this production person for saying that. So being able to go in and organize that, because when you organize a show, that means protections under the agreement. That means, especially on the smaller ones, that we have them do a deposit so that wages are covered, so that you don't have somebody who's not, all of a sudden they run out of money at the end and can't pay people. Things like the turnarounds. We just insisted on having a medic on a show. They didn't have a medic there. One of the big things we put in all our agreement, it has to do with safety. When we bring people in, when we organize them in, we have them take online safety classes.
Oh, wow.
As well as an online harassment class. But we also do training within the local, where we've been doing lift training that we regularly do in Virginia. We just did a props class here in Maryland. I want us to replicate it in Virginia. Zoom makes it easier for us to do a lot of classes. I've done shop stewards classes over Zoom, and we don't exclude people. So like my shop stewards class, you think, well, that's for a handful of people because there's only a handful of shows. I open it up because I want people to understand the agreements they're working under.
Good idea.
Understand what their rights are.
We've talked about benefits, and you've told a lot of great ones, the turnaround and the breaks and obviously the wages. Is there anything that people will be surprised that that's part of a union's job too, to make sure that it happens?
I don't know if people be surprised by it, but doing things like overtime is after 8 hours. And then 8 to 12 can be time and a half, double time after 12. I mentioned triple time now after 15. It's negotiating things like when people are hired from within the jurisdiction, they don't have to put them up. or give them what we call a housing allowance. But if somebody's 60 miles away, that's not a safe commute. So we work with the productions to see that they make at least a housing allowance available to people so that they don't have to try to make that commute, or they're excluded from working because they live in Virginia Beach or Roanoke or Stanton or Northern Virginia. I've been doing it so long, I don't know what would be a surprise. Our goal is the protection and to get the best terms and conditions for any of the technicians so that they're able to work in their chosen craft. You know, with the strikes last year, with there only being the one show in Virginia, there's been none in Maryland.
Wow.
During that time. They've been able to do other things with either stage locals or, some have had to find work, for lack of a better way of putting it, in the real world to make ends meet. And that's why I say we try to discourage people sometimes from coming in, because it is a tough industry. You don't know where the next job is coming from.
So one question I always like to ask everybody, when you're not out there hustling for the unions, what are you watching?
Mostly old stuff.
Like old movies, old TV shows?
Old TV shows. My wife and daughter have been alternating between How I Met Your Mother and Criminal Minds.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I'm looking forward to Homicide, the series we did here in Baltimore. It just became available for streaming on Peacock on Monday. So I'm looking forward to getting into that. But going back and watching shows like The West Wing, The Wire, Turn. The pandemic put me on the Suits bandwagon long before everybody else thought it was a big deal. Classic movies, newer movies. I don't get to the movie theaters as much as I'd like.
But I bet you always sit through the entire credits, don't you, David?
Absolutely.
Yep, so do I.
Well, it becomes a game. Even if you're seeing something that wasn't made here, it's like, oh, know that guy. I worked with him on such and such, and then you get to the very end and there's the IA logo with the Teamsters logo.
Ta-da. I was a director all my career. I didn't ever get to work with union people because I was on small budget shoots, but I certainly heard a lot and I've learned even more today.
Well, it's never too late. Let's get you a big budget and we'll work together.
I'm retired now. This is all I do.
Thank you for the opportunity. And I really enjoyed it and happy to speak with you anytime.
That was Dave O'Farrell, the business agent for IATSE Local 487, which represents film and TV technicians in Virginia.
Coming soon. In theaters.
Joker, Folie à Deux. This sequel to Joaquin Phoenix's character adds Lady Gaga to the mix in this musical. A different man. Sebastian Stan plays a man with facial deformities who has reconstructive surgery, also with Adam Person, who has neurofibromatosis. White Bird. A young man who's expelled from his school learns about the experience of his grandmother in Nazi-occupied France. She's played by Helen Mirren. The Outrun. Saoirse Ronan plays a woman coming to terms with her past. Frankie Frico. A guy decides to attend a party hosted by the titular goblin and a bunch of puppets.
TV and streaming.
Salem's Lot on Max, a new version of Stephen King's vampire thriller. Hold Your Breath on Hulu. Sarah Paulson stars as a woman in 30s Oklahoma dealing with dust storms and more. The Franchise on Max, a comedy series about the making of a superhero movie. An Oprah special, Elvis, Lisa Marie, and Riley on Paramount Plus. Oprah sits down with Riley Keough to talk about her grandfather and her mother. Caddo Lake on Max, a thriller produced by M. Night Shyamalan about the mysterious disappearance of a young girl. La Maquina on Hulu. Longtime actor friends Diego Luna and Gael Garcia Bernal star in this drama about a boxer's attempt to revive his career. In Thrive is a special film festival coming this month, which features the work of people who were formerly incarcerated. I'll have an interview with some of the creators of one of the films next week. This is Jerry Williams. Thanks for listening.
For more Sister, including literally thousands of reviews,
visit tvjerry.com.
That's a wrap.